What a strange game. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where, you know what, I think we're going to do things a little bit differently than we normally do. I know most people that are watching this have probably already seen the game, or at least the outcome of it, but I think this one might be a little bit more fun if we don't see the final score and just kind of experience the game. It's not going to be, terribly in depth. There's kind of two parts of this game, one significantly longer than the other. But just in case there's anybody watching this that hasn't watched the game, hasn't seen the result of it, maybe you'll get at least a little bit of a sense of how weird this game turned out to be. As the game gets started with the Kraken sending out the same lineup that they had in the previous game, no new re-additions to the team, nobody returning to the team from injury. Actually, McCann ends up going to IR from day to day. That actually happened before the Saturday game. I missed the announcement of it. But yeah, McCann now on IR. We won't be getting anybody back in the immediate near future. It sounds like Capo Caco is close to returning to practicing with the team, which then means he's somewhat close to returning to the team, and that'll be a very welcome return when that happens. But for now, same lineup out on the ice, Decord in net against a Montreal team that the Kraken, this is a good Montreal team coming in, or playing well to start the season. They're, like we talked about when the Kraken faced them just about a week ago in Montreal, or maybe 2 weeks ago in Montreal. Now, this being the second and final time they'll play this season, they're playing pretty well to start the year. Very young team that is definitely capable of making some mental mistakes, having some blunders along the way, and especially as it gets deeper into the season, it'll be interesting to see how much of this momentum that they've built early on they can keep up. But at least right now, the Kraken are getting them at their best twice, and well, it showed early on. Not only were the Kraken getting a fast Montreal team, but they just didn't really show up to the first period. It's a 7:30 start, so there's no excuse of showing up late. The game already started late, so I don't know what happened there, but the Kraken come out looking slow, sloppy, tired almost, which coming off 2 days rest makes absolutely no sense. And then you got 3 days rest after this. It's about the lightest the schedule is going to get aside from Christmas and February all season long. This is a pretty compact schedule most of the season, so I don't really know what the team would have been so tired to look this sloppy and sluggish coming out of the gate. Now, I suppose at the very least they're, at least for the first 10 minutes, the first half of the first period, they're able to mostly survive their kind of self-inflicted challenges that they pose to themselves defensively. Just could not connect on a pass. This is an exaggeration, I'm sure, but it felt like at times they were connecting more passes to the tape of Montreal players than their own. And fortunately, most of those turnovers, pretty bad ones, were happening either in Montreal's end, the few times the Kraken got there, or in the neutral zone in transition. So no really bad ones in open ice in the Kraken defensive end. But about 10 minutes in, that doesn't stop them from making a pretty, to start out a young season, uncharacteristically bad defensive mistake as they just completely collapse after a lost faceoff in their own end of the ice. And it doesn't take long for a shot to get down to, well, it actually bounces off Decord. Decord makes a save from a shot well out. Not a hard save, but it's along the ice, so it bounces off his pad, allowing a rebound out to Nick Suzuki, who's standing all alone right in front of Decord. He gets the puck, and Decord does a pretty good job here of not giving Suzuki really anything to do with the puck. He's too in tight to be able to lift it effectively over Decord's pad, and Decord's got him pretty much boxed out to the outside, and Larsson's coming from the other side, so he isn't able to try and get around. Eventually, though, he's still able to make something out of what seemed like nothing by firing the puck under the skate of Decord, which is pressed up against the post. Decord's got his skate kind of pressed up against the post, and the puck just shoots right under the skate in that kind of puck-sized hole that the blade allows as it's touching the post. It goes through the crease out to the far side where Cole Caulfield is waiting, and unless he puts it off of Larsson's shin, who's kind of standing in front of that side of the net, it's a goal. And sure enough, he just misses the shin of Larsson and gets what is a pretty easy goal with really nothing Decord can do about it. He did everything he could. They just found that one tiny little hole to get the puck through to that pass to Caulfield, and the Montreal Canadiens are up 1-0. At which point they do make their first mistake of the game, sending the Kraken almost immediately to a power play to try to even things up. A power play that goes absolutely nowhere whatsoever. They do get one pretty good chance right at the end of the power play, but it's pretty ineffective. One of the least dangerous power plays we've seen all season for a power play that has certainly cooled off here the last couple of games, but at least got off to a pretty good start and is generally, even when it doesn't score, had some chances throughout the 2 minutes. In this case, yeah, pretty much nothing until maybe I guess there was kind of a good flurry of action right at the end of the power play as the fifth skater is getting out of the box for the Habs, but yeah, they aren't able to make anything happen out of that. And then a couple minutes later, the Kraken send Montreal to their first power play, and it's kind of just more of the same from this penalty kill this season, which has been just downright terrible to start the year. And I mean, they're not getting completely just rolled over every time right away. They do at least show signs that there's something there on the penalty kill. They do a pretty good job generally of killing off the first minute of a power play and then just implode upon themselves, get walked up towards their own net, and then it's a quick passing play and absolutely nothing Decord can do about it. That's what happens here. Not long after we get through the first minute where Montreal had not really done anything with the puck, they just kind of get set up in the Kraken end, pass it around the outside, work the Kraken closer and closer to the net before eventually it's a tic-tac-toe passing play and a shot for Slafkovsky right out front that Decord has almost no chance at. He just kind of has to hope that it hits him. It doesn't. It hits the back of the net, and Montreal has a 2-0 lead just like that. The Kraken would get another chance on the power play not long after. I mean, there's not much time at this point left in the first period, but the Kraken, with about a minute left in the first, get their second chance on the power play, get actually a couple of good looks, better really than they got throughout the first 2 minutes of the first power play, but aren't able to score as we go to intermission. Coming out of the intermission, the Kraken again get a couple more chances on the back half of that power play, but still aren't able to make anything happen out of it. And then we get into the meat of the second period where the Kraken they looked a little bit better than the first, but they weren't having as many of the defensive mistakes. They kind of cleaned up the defensive end, which was a bit of an adventure there throughout the first period, but they still kind of look slow. They looked kind of 2 or 3 steps slow in the first. Maybe now they look just a step slow, but it's still enough to make Montreal look like they're destined to extend the lead. Fortunately, they aren't able to do that. I mean, it actually almost was 3-0 coming into this period. I forgot to mention, after they scored on the power play, almost immediately after they scored on that power play to make it 2-0, Decord had to make a really nice save on a Kirby Dach chance as he just kind of skated around a couple of Kraken defensemen straight up to Decord and then tried to wrap it around to the far side, but Decord saw it coming, read it well, and got his toe to the far post to save that. But yeah, getting back to the second period, the Kraken still a step slow. Montreal still controlling the pace of play. As far as trying to create any offense back the other way, the Kraken are still having a really hard time getting the puck from one stick to another. It's a lot of just kind of throwing the puck out into empty space where I guess they thought they might have a teammate or vaguely hoping that a teammate might be there, or way over leading passes thinking someone's going to get to the puck faster or has more speed coming in. It just looks completely out of sync. The attention to detail and discipline that we've seen from this team for the majority of this young season so far just wasn't there, and especially in transition. Again, it kind of started to come back a little bit on the back check, which they were spending a lot of time on the back check, but in transition back the other way, where this team has been more consistently good than we've seen them since the year they went to the playoffs, they just could not get anything going in transition whatsoever. I mean, pretty much the only way the Kraken were transitioning effectively into the offensive end was either the fourth line just kind of forcing their way in through sheer will, though they were generally against the fourth line of Montreal, so it's not like it's really they're facing the best competition there is, or it was Matty Beniers just kind of doing it all himself. Through most of the first two periods, it kind of seemed like Beniers and Decord were the only guys even kind of trying out there. Now, eventually, the Kraken are able to at least keep Montreal from scoring. They're starting to, like I said, do a little bit better defensively, and they end up getting another power play out of it. This power play, not quite as effective as the second one. Better than the first. They get a couple pretty good looks, but it is just those two good looks, neither one of them ends up scoring, and it's not as much sustained pressure as they had in the second power play that was split by the first intermission. Either way, the result's the same. Montreal kills it off, and we do end up getting through the last couple minutes of the second to the second intermission as we head into a third period with the Kraken down 2-0 and looking completely hopeless. I mean, at least at this point, it seems like they might not give up another goal as long as they can stay off the kill. But they just are showing absolutely no life whatsoever offensively. I mean, pretty much at this point, unless Beniers is able to perfectly pick a spot with a shot on one of his solo rushes, it's going to be a shutout at home. But I suppose, to be fair, it is still the NHL of the 21st century, or certainly the NHL of the 2020s, where, I mean, this might not have been the case 20, 30 years ago, but in today's NHL, a 2-0 lead can disappear out of nowhere for no real apparent reason. We saw it happen quite a bit last year. The Kraken were the best team in the NHL at coming back from 2-0 deficits to end up winning games. They weren't good at a whole heck of a lot else, but they were good at having these fun comebacks and at least making you feel like a game wasn't over when you entered a third period down 2-0. That having been said, this team is not that team. This team is much more built trying to play from the back end forward and just not allow much to happen at year end and then take advantage of mistakes back the other way, which is not necessarily a style that is going to be very successful coming from behind, and especially not coming from behind 2 goals down when you've shown no life offensively whatsoever. And then, of course, it doesn't help anything when you go 3 goals down, which is what the Kraken do very early on in the third. They go to another penalty kill. It's more of the same from the penalty kill. I suppose this time they at least delay the inevitable a little bit longer than they did the first time. They incredibly effectively kill off the first minute. I mean, Montreal hardly even gets into the offensive end through the first minute of this power play, but eventually they do get into the offensive end, and it doesn't take them all that long after they do to pass it around the outside a few times, work the Kraken up to the net, and then it's a passing play, this time just 2 passes rather than 3, to find, well, they do get a bit of a lucky bounce this time, but it still ends up being just kind of a quick passing play from one side to the other. What was supposed to be a shot on net ends up bouncing off the shin of Alexiak out to Newhook, and Newhook thinks quickly, fires off that shot, and puts it in the back of the net before Decord can get to that other side. I mean, he was wide open. If he decided to pass it to Newhook, the result would have been the same. It just ends up going off Alexiak's shin rather than going straight to him. Either way, the Kraken do not defend this well whatsoever, don't give Decord much of a chance, and Montreal goes 2 for 2 on the power play and makes it 3-0 a couple minutes into the third. So, I mean, yeah, if it wasn't already over at 2-0 coming into this power play, it's certainly now completely over after giving up your second in as many attempts power play goal to Montreal to make it 3-0 a couple minutes into a third period where you, again, still have yet to show any kind of sign of life or really any kind of real effort offensively. Like, you hardly have yet to connect 2 passes tape to tape back to back, much less effectively transition from one end of the ice to the other, unless you get it on Benier's stick for him to go just try and do it all himself. And I mean, look, if you're down 2-0, maybe you just get a weird bounce, something goes in, and then maybe a power play finally connects. At least there's been some signs of life there. But down 3-0, it's over. It's over. I mean, at the very least, the Kraken do get a power play not long after going down 3-0, so they have a chance to break up the shutout, and again, they get a couple pretty good chances. Beniers gets a good look in on net, which of course doesn't go in, but the Kraken do keep possession, cycle the puck around the outside, up along the near boards, catting with it, eventually just passes it up to the point where Brandon Montour is waiting with his stick lifted. He fires off the bomb, and right down Main Street, buries it into the back of the net with some help of it ramping off the blade of a stick of a Montreal defender in front. I wasn't for that. I think it might have just gone off the pad, but yeah, they get a little bit of a break there with it going off a Montreal stick. Montour gets the power play goal, and the Kraken at least have broken up the shutout. So, I mean, yeah, it probably is still too little too late, but at least Montour gets his first of the season. The Kraken power play gets back on the board after a little bit of a cold streak there coming out of what was a very good road trip for the power play. They started again to show some signs of life and actually convert here. Plus, if nothing else, you gave the home crowd something to cheer about in this game, who, to be honest, had really not had very much to cheer about whatsoever to this point in the game. So they get to cheer about something, they get to hear the goal horn, do the goal song, all that fun stuff. Anybody that's in the building for the first time at least got to experience that stuff. But it still probably is not going to lead to much of anything unless the Kraken just completely flip things around out of this power play goal. It's still, yes, almost certainly too little too late, even if you pull the goaltender to give it the old college try at the end with the 6-on-5. You're probably not scoring twice before you give up an empty netter, and you're probably not going to get any more power plays considering you've already had 4 to Montreal's 2, and this is the NHL where officials almost never give one team significantly more penalties than the other. And then as we get to 5-on-5 following this Kraken goal, it becomes pretty clear that it is almost definitely too little too late as the Kraken just go back to, I mean, they're at least starting to connect some passes and make some transitions look at least mildly competent, but nothing that's leading to anything terribly dangerous back the other way. Certainly no real momentum to speak of at 5-on-5. And we get into the final 5 minutes with the Kraken still trailing by 2 and just not able to solve Montreal's defensive efforts. Fortunately, while you might not get another power play, though, there is another way to avoid 5-on-5 play, and that is to go to 4-on-4, which is exactly what happens when Ben Meyers gets what really looked like boarding, but gets slammed with a somewhat dirty hit in behind the Kraken net. That draws a crowd immediately. Yanni Newman going to his defense. 3 different players all surrounding Kirby Dach as they kind of just rough him up a little bit. Eventually, all the chaos. It doesn't lead to a fight, which is a little bit disappointing for anybody that wanted to hear Wes McCauley call the 2 for fighting thing. And he was the official in this game. So we don't get a fight and we don't get to hear all that. But we do get some 4-on-4 play with actually it was Newman and Dach both heading to the boxes. And all of a sudden at 4-on-4, it's like it's a completely different team. Apparently those 2 extra skaters, 1 on each team, was the offensive blocker for the Kraken this entire time. As a 4-on-4, they do look completely different offensively. Montreal does start with the puck, but once the Kraken get the puck, they get into the offensive end, and then it's good chance after good chance after good chance, and suddenly the next thing you know, Montour has the puck again, and instead of actually shooting it himself, he passes it up to Shane Wright, who fires off the shot and buries it into the near side of the net through a screen of Montreal players. Definitely not one the goaltender could see cleanly. A great shot from Wright before the goalie has any idea where it is. It's behind him, and the Kraken might just have some life after all, down just 2-3 now, or down 1. Down 3-2. There's still 5 minutes left, 4.5 minutes left for the Kraken to complete a miracle. Though with that having been said, there is still, of course, the big problem for the Kraken in this game of the 5-on-5 of it all. They still can't make anything happen at 5-on-5 as we get back to that after this goal at 4-on-4 for the next couple of minutes. And Montreal actually gets the next couple of chances at 5-on-5. So once again, the Kraken not really able to build momentum in the normal flow of play. Eventually, though, with just under 3 minutes left, they are able to get Decord pulled for a face-off in Montreal's end. So we're avoiding 5-on-5 by doing 6-on-5. And in 6-on-5, the Kraken win the face-off back, cycle it a couple of times, get a shot off. Nothing doing there. It ends up back the other way. Actually, I think the Kraken end up kind of accidentally clearing it out of Montreal's end. So they regroup, come back in, cycle the puck one more time, and just not finding anything, having a hard time getting to the middle. So Dunn looking down, trying to find a screen to shoot the puck, eventually doesn't see anything, but makes what is clearly the right decision here and passes it to the hot hand. Just a quick little pass to Brandon Montour, who's standing there for almost 30 seconds, it seemed. It was probably like 5, but with his stick up in the air, ready to go, and as soon as Dunn puts it right in front of him, he fires off an absolute missile and buries it in the back of the net to tie the game at 3 as the Kraken somehow, someway against all odds, a lot of those odds put against them by themselves, they have come from what seemed like a completely hopeless effort to roar back from 3 down and tie this game in the final minute. It has to be one of the strangest comebacks I've ever seen from a Kraken team. They have not come back from 3 down very many times in their existence. In fact, for a long time, they'd only done it once. That was in the inaugural season. Pretty early on in the inaugural season, they came back from, I want to say it was a 5-2 deficit in the third period against Columbus, and ended up losing that one in overtime, but at least they came back from it and then hadn't come back from 3-0 down to win a game in a very, very long time. Never mind, I mean, just coming back to tie it, they hadn't done that very often. So then to do it all of a sudden in a very unapologetically defensively focused system, one that had to this point not shown any signs of life throughout the game whatsoever. You find a power play goal, a 4-on-4 goal, and then a 6-on-5. Well, they can't do anything at 5-on-5. At least they finally found a way in the 3 chances that they had to score on all 3 of them to get this game to overtime. Assuming they can survive the final minute, which they do make very interesting. The final 7 seconds were, once again, hold on to your butts. The Canadiens are going to try to score and nearly do. I don't know if Montour ends up making a save here at the end. He certainly had a block. It was dicey in the last couple seconds there around the Kraken net, but they do manage to survive it, get it to overtime where... well, just couldn't have completed it all the way. In overtime, Montreal gets the puck to start with. They make a pretty careless, I think it was, I don't know if it was Suzuki or who it was, that just kind of fires off a really low chance shot from fairly well out. It allows the Kraken to get possession. And the Kraken have been very good at keeping possession. They do the responsible thing. Not the most entertaining thing always, but they cycle and cycle and cycle until you get good chances. Except for this time, for whatever reason, they don't do that. Chandler Stevenson just kind of tries to throw a long distance pass up the ice to like Schwartz. I can't remember who this was intended for, but it goes well wide of the mark. Just hands possession back over to Montreal. They come back down the other way. A bit of a mishandled puck leaves it out between Caulfield and Catton. Catton almost gets to it first as he lunges with his stick out to try and poke it free and then get a breakaway the other way. But Caulfield's able to win the 50-50, takes it in, just goes straight around Vince Dunn. I don't know what Dunn was doing there, but it's certainly not putting up any kind of a defensive effort to speak of as far as preventing Caulfield from just getting right up next to Decord. That's what he does, and instead of firing off the tight angle shot after faking like he's going to go around the net, Decord is wise to that. He stays to his post, but this time Caulfield looks like he's going to go around and then just whacks and whacks and whacks and whacks, and somehow in all that manages to get it past one of Decord's legs that's kind of pinched up against the outside of the net, and then off of the inside of the other leg to then loop it around the post and into the net behind Decord. I never saw a over-the-top shot of it, so I don't really know how Caulfield pulls this off, but for the second time in as many meetings, not that long into overtime, Caulfield from a tight angle right next to the net is able to score to end it. So the Kraken, after having that incredibly exciting, incredibly improbable comeback, still just end up getting the 1 point out of it. It kind of in some ways feels like they stole a point, but at the same time, it feels like if they had just played the way they did in the third period, most of the rest of the game, or hey, even just showed up on a penalty kill, then you might not have been in this place in the first place, and you might have won this in regulation, but we'll never know. So in the end, the Kraken lose this one 4-3 in overtime. They do get the 1 point in the standings out of a game that, based on how they played the vast majority of it, they really had no business getting that point out of. They did have a fun, exciting to watch comeback at the end that will definitely, I'm sure, convince any fans that stayed to the end of it to try and come back to another game, because it certainly was an entertaining back half of that third period, I'll tell you what, but it did still... it feels pretty anticlimactic when you still end up losing it in overtime. At the very least, the Kraken are still have points in all their home games, I suppose, and as you start to get into a stretch of November that looks pretty easy, you get a Rangers team that is completely can't get out of their own way coming in next, and then you start to get the Chicagos and the San Joses of the world, who actually might not be as much of pushovers as they have been the last couple of years, especially Chicago's actually kind of playing pretty well right now, so we'll see how those games go. The Kraken, if they play like they did against Montreal in this one, it could be a pretty similar story. It's still, though, they're very beatable teams, in fact, teams that I would go so far as to say if the Kraken really do believe that they're a good team, as their record right now would kind of suggest they could be, these are games that you really should be winning and kind of need to be winning, especially as this is the easiest stretch of schedule the Kraken are going to have by difficulty of opponent. it was then kind of November is their time to really take advantage of the schedule and get some wins, get some points in the standings against teams that, yeah, I mean, like I said, Chicago's kind of playing well right now, but these are still Chicago and San Jose. New York not so much, but Chicago and San Jose are still young, fast teams like Montreal, maybe not quite as far along in the process of getting up to the NHL discipline and that kind of stuff as Montreal is, and we still saw them make some young mistakes. But if you can play the solid defensive structure and then put some pressure back on them the other way, you should be able to have some success against some of these teams the Kraken are going to be playing in these next few games. Of course, with Montreal, they just weren't able to play. Well, I mean, in the first period, they hardly were playing even the defensive side of things well. But then for the entirety of the game at 5-on-5, they were not putting any real pressure on Montreal back the other way to force any kind of mistakes that could lead to good offensive opportunities. But anyway, that's probably getting too far ahead of ourselves. For now, as far as this game is concerned for the Kraken, like I said, again, one of the stranger games I can ever remember seeing from this team. A defensive system that collapses in the first period. They have certainly the first period, it might be their worst period of the season. Philadelphia was pretty bad, but two of their worst periods of the season where they just cannot get out of their own way offensively, even defensively in the first, not making anything happen. 10 shots on goal after 2 periods, and not one of them seemed even remotely dangerous. To then, all of a sudden, you're down 3-0 because your penalty kill just might as well skate off the ice after the first minute for all the good it's doing. You're down 3-0, and then out of nowhere, just 3 goals to tie the game, send it to overtime, have all the momentum in the world, and then just kind of have a lapse in discipline once again with a bad pass to give over possession, and then an uncharacteristic goal for Decord to allow to end it just like that. So, a weird one. At least the Kraken get a point in a game that certainly we did not think there was any chance of that happening. Midway through the third, they find a way to at least do that. So if that's a resiliency that we can expect from this team going forward, it'd be nice if they could not put themselves in those positions, especially if the penalty kill could actually look mildly competent at some point this season. But we'll certainly happily take the silver lining of a resilient fight to come back in this game and at least get the 1 point in the standings. Anyway, with that being said, I've rambled on too much about this game. It's getting pretty late. I already didn't sleep well last night, so I'm sure this has been a little bit of a scatterbrained mess. Hopefully the magic of editing will fix that a little bit, but for now, we'll close this one out with the Kraken 3 stars and get into a 3-day break that I don't think we're going to get again until probably not Thanksgiving. Yeah, probably until Christmas, I think, is the next time we're going to get 3 days off of Kraken hockey in a row. So for whatever reason, the Kraken 1 game in a week, and then, yeah, we'll not see that again until Christmas or maybe even February. For now, though, yeah, the Kraken 3 stars is I'm once again getting a little scatterbrained and sidetracked. As always, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide Kraken 3 stars in every regular season or playoff game, you can help support a little bit more than you already are by going to the link down below and supporting over there as well. The hard to argue the opinion being shared on Patreon was to just give Montour all 3 stars. I don't know what Montreal did to Brandon Montour to piss him off, but that is I think they're pretty happy that they only had to face him, I think, just once this year. I think he did play the game in Montreal. That was the one he played before, obviously, then missing the rest of it. For him to come back after everything that he's been through and then to score 2 goals and also primary assist on the third, an absolutely incredible, at least third period from Montour. And yeah, again, considering everything that he has been through, having his older brother pass away just a week ago, and then pretty much missing all of the preseason due to injury, it has been a tough couple of months for Montour, but for him to still come in and pretty much nearly single-handedly turn this game around and get the Kraken a point in the standings, it seems somewhat deserved that he would just get all 3 stars. That's not quite how it works, so he will get the first star quite emphatically, and obviously the second star, boy, it was tough to even decide if we were going to do a second star, but I felt like a second star is warranted here for Matty Beniers, if for no other reason than, I mean, he doesn't get on the score sheet, but again, for the first 2 periods, aside from Joey Decord, who had a couple of good saves, Beniers seemed like the only skater that was even remotely putting in more than 50% effort. He was the only skater that was doing anything of any real effect offensively. I mean, Cartier had a couple of moments, but yeah, Beniers was pretty much a one-man show to some extent in the first period, and then eventually the rest of the team, or at least some of the rest of the team, showed up in the third to finally start to get some things to show up on the scoreboard. Aside from those two, though, I don't know if we're going to do a third star in this one. There is a lot of players that just kind of didn't play to the periods. So even if, Wright has a goal, I don't know. I don't know if I feel great about giving a star to anyone else. So we'll go Montour and Beniers for this one. Again, as always, let me know in the comments if you disagree, if there's a third star you'd like to throw in there, or maybe a second and third if you want to throw someone other than Beniers out there. I think Montour is the obvious one that has to stay, but yeah, let me know what you thought of this game. How you experienced it if you did stick around past 3-0. There was a fair number of people that left the arena at 3-0, and yeah, that was probably not a mistake many of them will make again, but hey, you got to learn somehow, I suppose, to not leave a game early. Until next time, though, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.